Welcome back, students. In our previous lecture, we had talked about religious life during the post-Mauryan age. Now we need to talk about the developments in the field of literature and culture. First of all, literature during the post-Mauryan age. What are we going to start seeing? क्या देखने के लिए मिलेगा? This was a period of Brahmanical revival as well as the period of the emergence of Mahayana Buddhism. Religious literature has always been an important source of literary creation in India, and these developments would result in the promotion of the literature of which language? Prakrit and Pali or Sanskrit? Sanskrit. Write down. Rapid expansion of literary expression took place during the post-Mauryan age. देखो, because of this, Sanskrit literature is going to grow. Further, this was also the period of the spread of Buddhism and Jainism to the Deccan region. What was the power ruling over the Deccan region in the post-Mauryan age? The Satavahanas, right? Were the Satavahanas Brahmanical rulers or not? Yes. But even though they were Brahmanical rulers, because of the importance of Buddhism and Jainism in their state, what was their official language? Prakrit. Okay? So, spread of Buddhism and Jainism to the Deccan would also lead to the continued expression or continued creation of Prakrit and Pali literature as well. Further, this was also the period when literature emerged for the first time in the deep south. This was the Sangam age, resulting in the emergence of a new literary tradition. In which language? Tamil. Okay. Further, since Buddhism was shifting towards the use of Sanskrit, ये shift immediate नहीं, it would take some time, right? And as such, under the influence of Mahayana Buddhism, hybrid Sanskrit texts would be composed as well. Clear? Write down. Hybrid Sanskrit text मतलब कि partly in Prakrit, partly in Sanskrit. Write down. During this period, a large volume of Sanskrit, Prakrit, Tamil, Pali, and hybridized Buddhist Sanskrit texts were produced. Full stop. Next point. Next main point. Sanskrit emerged, comma, due to Brahmanical revival. Due to Brahmanical revival and the emergence of Mahayana Buddhism, comma, as the major medium for religious literature, secular literature, as well as royal inscriptions for the first time. Right? Some important examples of Sanskrit literature also you can give. Religious literature mein, the earliest Purans, the earliest Dharma Shastras, and the epics such as the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Secular literature mein, works such as the Mahabhashya of Patanjali and the Sariputra Parikarna were composed during this period. Further, it was also during this period that Buddhist Sanskrit works emerged, such as the Avdan literature, the Buddha Charita, etc. Write down. Prominent religious Sanskrit works, सब point लिख सकते हो. Prominent religious Sanskrit works include the Purans, the Dharma Shastras, the Ramayana and Mahabharata, the Buddha Charita, and Avdan texts. The Ramayana and Mahabharata, the Buddha Charita, and Avdan texts. So stop. Next point. Famous secular Sanskrit works include the Mahabhashya of Patanjali, and Sariputra Parikarna. It is the earliest known Sanskrit drama to have ever been composed. The Mahabhashya of Patanjali and the Sariputra Parikarna, written by Ashwaghosh. The Sariputra Parikarna. Next point. In royal inscriptions, may we start seeing the use of Sanskrit instead of Prakrit as the preferred language. किसके inscriptions में सबसे पहले देखने के लिए मिला? रुद्रदमन, right? Write down. The Junagadh rock inscription of Rudradaman was the first ever inscription written in chaste Sanskrit. Full stop. Chaste Sanskrit. Chaste संस्कृत और प्योर संस्कृत, ठीक है. चेस्ट संस्कृत. ये तो हो गया दी संस्कृत लिटरेचर. नेक्स्ट Pali and Prakrit literature. Write down. Main point. Owing to the spread of Buddhism, and Jainism, to the Deccan region, large quantities of Pali and Prakrit literature, were composed here. Full stop. Subpoint. A number of new Jataka tales. In Pali were added to the Sutta Pitaka. Full stop. Next subpoint. Prakrit was adopted as their official language by the Satavahanas, despite being of Brahmanical origin, despite having Brahmin Varna or Brahmin identity. Full stop. Most of their royal inscriptions are written in Prakrit. Full stop. Next subpoint. Similarly, the famous compilation of love poems Gatha Satpati is attributed to the Satvahana ruler Hala. ठीक है, ये हो गया पाली एंड प्राकृत लिटरेचर. नेक्स्ट तमिल लिटरेचर. नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. द बिगिनिंग ऑफ तमिल लिटरेचर occurred during the Sangam age. Full stop. Subpoint. A large number of Tamil texts were produced, such as the Tolkappiyam, written by Tolkapyar. It is the earliest known work on Tamil grammar. And it is in itself considered to be the oldest work among the whole of the body of Sanskrit of Sangam literature. The Silapathikram, written by Ilango Adigal. It is an epic. It is a long poem with a story revolving around three protagonists, namely Kovalan, Kannagi, and Madhavi. Kovalan was a rich merchant from the city of Puhar. Kannagi, wife of Kovalan, and Madhavi, a rich courtesan of Madurai, who was also the lover of Kovalan. Okay? So Kovalan and Madhavi were lovers. Kannagi was Kovalan's wife. पति पत्नी और वो उसकी कहानी. ठीक है. Now, in the first half, the theme is quite light and playful. It covers the dalliance between Kovalan and Madhavi. In the second half, Kovalan falls upon hard times. He incurs a huge loss in business and is forced to take one of the jewels of his wife Kannagi to go and sell it off in order to obtain money. But he does not want to do it in the city of Puhar, so he takes it to Madurai. The jeweler whom he tries to sell this to gets suspicious. He believes that such a fine item could only belong to the queen and calls the authorities. They arrest Kovalan, who is then executed without trial on the charges of theft from the royal house. Right? Who is going to come and avenge Kovalan's death, unlawful death? Girlfriend or wife? Wife. Okay? So Kannagi would come and avenge Kovalan's death, setting fire to the whole city of Madurai. Right? And from here, Kannagi was elevated to the status of a goddess. Goddess of what? Goddess of wifely devotion. Okay? She began to be worshipped as the goddess of chastity, goddess of purity. So Kannagi cult started, as part of which a new ideal known as the Karpu ideal became the highest goal for women in Tamil society. What is this ideal all about? That the highest goal for any woman is to be a good wife. Wifely devotion. Clear? What does this tell us about the changing nature of gender relations? Position of women as a result of such developments? Would it be becoming better or worsening in the Tamil region? Worsening, right? They would be expected to live up to this ideal and remain dutiful, devoted towards their husbands, no matter what. Then We have the Money Make Lie. Written by Shatanar. It is also an epic and is in fact written in the form of a sequel to the Silapatikram. Money Make Lie was in fact the daughter of Kovalan and Madhu. क्या रियल स्टोरी नहीं थी, इमेजिनरी स्टोरी है. बट in the imagination of the poet Shatanar, Kovalan and Madhavi had a daughter, that is Money Make Lie, and this particular work actually covers her various adventures. It also gives us a clear picture of the spread of Buddhism in South India at this period during the Sangam age. Then we have two different poetic compilations known as the Pathine Mel Kanakku and Pathine Kil Kanakku. मेल का मतलब होता है बड़ा, किल का मतलब छोटा. तो दिस इज अ कलेक्शन ऑफ 18 great anthologies. This is the collection of 18 lesser anthologies. An anthology is a collection of poetic works. Okay? So 18 collections of poetry. The Pathine Mel Kanakku can be further subdivided into two parts. The Pattu Pattu, also called the Padit Pattu, is a collection of 10 anthologies, 10 great anthologies, and the Ettu Togai, collection of the remaining 8 anthologies, 8 great anthologies. Okay? Now, both of these are poetic compilations. Based on the theme, setting, and emotional content of these poems, Tamil poems have been divided into two genres. Namely, Akam or Aham or Agam poetry. The second one is known as Puram poetry. Okay? The setting of Akam poetry is in forests. Puram poetry is in cities. The theme of Akam poetry is love, longing, loneliness, rapture, jealousy, etc. Whereas that of the Puram poetry is war, courage, sacrifice, ethics, morality, justice, duty, the ideas of good and evil, etc. Right and wrong. And as such, Puram poetry is said to denote which aspect of Tamil poetry, male or female, masculine or feminine? Masculine. And these themes, these emotions, they are shown as feminine emotions, feminine themes. Now, among the 18 lesser anthologies, the most famous one is the Thirukkural, written by Thiruvalluvar. What is the theme? Ethics, justice, the ideas of right and wrong, good and evil, morality, etc. And so great has been the intellectual impact of the Thirukkural that it is popularly known as the fifth Ved or the Tamil Ved. Fifth Veda or Tamil Veda. So these are some of the most important works of Tamil Sangam literature. Fifth Veda or Tamil Veda. Okay. And then finally, we have hybridized Buddhist Sanskrit works. Next main point likho. During the pre-Mauryan and Mauryan age, Pali and Prakrit were the most important mediums of literary expression. So stop. Next point. The post-Mauryan period witnessed the rising popularity of Sanskrit due to the Brahmanical revival, and Emergence of Mahayana Buddhism. Next point, sub point. Till now, all Buddhist scriptures were written in Pali or Prakrit. However, a gradual shift towards Sanskrit had started. Due to which a class of hybridized Buddhist Sanskrit literature emerged. Buddhist Sanskrit literature emerged. Using the vocabulary and grammar of both Prakrit and Sanskrit. Some important examples include the Saundaranand, the Mahavastu, and the Lalit Vistar. The Lalit Vistar. Okay? So these were the developments that took place in the field of literature. Next theme that we need to cover क्या है? Cultural developments. In the form of painting, sculpture, as well as architecture. First of all, paintings. Subheading the paintings. The Post-Mauryan Age witnessed the beginning of Indian mural art. Indian mural art. What is mural art? Paintings done on walls. ठीक है, तो wall paintings होती है. And on what kinds of walls do you think these paintings were done? On cave walls initially, at places such as Ajanta and Thane. The earliest caves at Ajanta and Thane were excavated during the post-Mauryan period only, under the patronage of the Satvahan rulers. And cave numbers 9 and 10 at Ajanta and several caves at Thane contain paintings which are derived from the Jataka tales, such as the Shraddhant Jataka, etc. ठीक है, तो क्या लिखा है आपने अभी? हाँ, Indian mural art at sites such as Ajanta and Thane. At sites such as Ajanta and Thane. Next subheading, architecture. Architecture. देखो, two different types of architecture. Two different types of architecture developed during this period. Developed during this period. Residential architecture and religious architecture. Next point. The Milind Panho. Remember this work? Written by Nag Sen, right? The Milind Panho. The Milind Panho describes the capital city of Menander. Of Menander. What was the name of his capital city? Sakal or Sagal, that is Sialkot. Sagal. Sagal. As a city with numerous palaces. As a city with numerous palaces. Comma. Fortifications. Comma. A moat. A moat. Comma. Lakes. Villas. Markets. And slums. And slums. Full stop. Next subpoint. Most of these structures were made of wood. Of these structures were made of wood. Full stop. Next main point. In the field of religious architecture, comma, we witness the emergence of temples or shrines and the continuation of stupa and cave art. Stupa and cave art. Full stop. Next point. Temple construction was in its earliest stage of development and had not attained the status of an art form. Subpoint. Some small shrines and temples were constructed. Were constructed. Example, the Vaishnavite shrines, the Vaishnavite shrines at Jhandial, Nagri, and Desnagar, along with a small Buddhist shrine at Nagarjuna Konda. Small Buddhist shrine at Nagarjuna Konda. Clear है? Next main point. Stupa architecture. Stupa architecture emerged as an highly evolved art form. Emerged as an highly evolved art form during this period. During this period. The point. Several famous stupas were constructed, such as the Bharut, Amravati, and Pushkalvati stupas by the Sungas. Amravati by Satvahanas. Pushkalvati by the Kushans, Kanishk. Kushans, respectively. By the Shungas, Satvahanas, and Kushans, respectively. Full stop. Next point. Additionally, several older stupas were repaired, renovated, and enlarged. Example, the renovation and enlargement of the Sanchi stupa was undertaken by the Shungas. ठीक है, ये हो गया stupas. Next point. Next main point. Cave architecture also entered its next phase of development. During the Post-Mauryan Age. As a large number of caves were excavated. Where? In which physiographic regions? In the Western and Eastern Ghats. So write down. In the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats. बता रहा हूँ। उदयगिरी खंडागिरी की कहाँ पर? उड़ीसा में, राइट। वेस्टर्न घाट्स में अजंता, कारले, भाज केव्स, नासिक केव्स, ठाणे केव्स, कॉन्डिविटे केव्स, एटसेट्रा। कॉन्डिविटे, कोंडाने, अजंता, कारले, कॉन्डिविटे, कोंडाने, भाज, नासिक, ठाणे, एटसेट्रा। लार्ज नंबर ऑफ, क्या लिखा है आपने? हाँ, वेस्टर्न एंड ईस्टर्न घाट्स फॉर Buddhist and Jain monks, for Buddhist and Jain monks, as chaityas and viharas, as chaityas and viharas. ठीक है? Now, what were the chaityas? क्या होते थे ये? These were places of worship for the monks. These were prayer halls. Generally, chaityas consisted of a long chamber if this is the opening, then this is the end, right? Along both sides was a row of pillars. Known as a colonnade. Over here was a votive stupa. Okay. This semicircular region was known as the apse, while the rectangular chamber was known as the nave. The column of the row of pillars was known as the colonnade. This was the votive stupa. ठीक है? हाँ, नेव ये जो रेक्टेंगुलर वाला पोर्शन बीच में ओपनिंग, ठीक है, दिस वाज नोन एज दी नेव. हाँ, गेट ये ओपनिंग ये है, एंड जनरली आउटसाइड द ओपनिंग यूज्ड टू बी अ पिलर. ठीक है. Now, if we look at the Chaitya from its entrance, what do we usually find? That the entrance is highly decorative. Okay? This is the living rock, and from here into it, an arch-like entrance has been, or gateway has been carved. Generally, 2 levels होते थे. The upper level had a horseshoe-shaped window, whereas the lower level had a narrow opening usually. Okay? Why this large horseshoe-shaped window? To let in air and light. Write down. Chaityas or prayer halls were generally in the shape of an elongated chamber with a rectangular portion known as the nave, and a semicircular ending known as the apse. Next point. The walls of the chamber were generally smooth. While the ceiling may have a fluted surface. ठीक है. कैसे? मान लो कि ये स्तूपा है, राइट, एंड behind that is going to be the wall and the ceiling. This is also going to be like this semicircular, right? And it is going to project outwards. तो इधर से हम इसको मान लेते हैं that like this is going, or like this. All right. Now, the interior of the ceiling may be either smooth or have a fluted surface. तो उसमें ribs या फिर ridges बने हो. ठीक है. The ribbed surface may be simply over the apse region, or it may cover the entire chamber. So in different case we get different examples. What is the last thing you have written? While the ceiling may have a fluted surface. Next point लिखो. On both sides of the nave was a row of smooth columns stone columns with a rounded shape known as the colonnade. Known as the colonnade. Next point. The Alps region generally housed a votive stupa, which was the main object of worship. A votive stupa, which was the main object of worship. Full stop. Next point. These caves were given highly decorated entrances which were carved in the shape of a huge arch out of the living rock. Full stop. Next point. Of the living rock. Next point. The entrance was divided into two levels. Full stop. A and B. A. The lower level consisted of a relatively small and narrow opening. B. The upper level had a large horseshoe-shaped entrance. To let in air. Stop. Next point. Right outside the Chaitya entrance was generally a stone pillar with an animal capital. Clear? Now, ceiling of these Chaityas कैसा होगा? Would it be flat or apsidal? और जो ये वाला पोर्शन है, would it also be apsidal or cuboidal? ठीक है, write down. While the ceiling of the interior was apsidal, its lower portion was cuboidal. Was cuboidal. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. At times, comma, the cave walls, the Chaitya walls, were decorated with murals based on murals based on the Buddhist Jataka stories. Buddhist Jataka stories. तो ये हो गए चैत्यास. Second kinds of caves that were excavated during this period, viharas. Write down viharas. What were they? They were places of residence for the monks. So, vihars were excavated as residential chambers for the Buddhist monks. For the monks. Stop. For the monks. What was the shape? They generally had a square or rectangular shape. देखो, they generally had a square or a rectangular shape. With a small entrance. That was usually recessed. Behind a large pillared veranda. Behind a large pillared veranda. ठीक है, next point. The interior surface of the chaityas were plain. However, smaller secondary chambers were carved out by excavating from the interior wall of the main hall. Smaller secondary chambers were carved out by excavating from the main hall, by excavating from the interior wall of the main hall. Full stop. सब पॉइंट लिखो. Generally, a bench was carved out of the rock to provide seating for the resident monks in these chambers. To provide seating for the resident monks in these chambers. Full stop. Next sub point लिखो. During this stage, comma, Chaityas had a single level. Stop. Next sub point. Double-storied Chaityas emerged during the Gupta age, and triple-storied Chaityas appeared under the Rashtrakutas. Emerged during the Gupta age, and triple-story Chaityas emerged under the Rashtrakutas. So the entrance to these caves, seen from the front, would look somewhat like this. So once again, generally a narrow opening, either in the form of a square or rectangular gateway or an arched gateway. Several pillars of columns supporting the roof of the large veranda, with all these structures being carved out of the living rock. And how to ensure that there is ample air and space circulation and light circulation? By cutting out sizable windows in the upper levels of the चैत्या wall. ठीक है, राइट डाउन. और यहाँ पे फिर उसको अप्रोच करने के लिए स्टेप्स. Are the steps, right? लिखो. To ensure that there is ample light and air circulation, comma, the facade of the cave, FACADE, of the cave was given large rectangular openings towards the top. Next point. The frontal facade was also generally covered in rich carvings and paintings. carvings and paintings, while the interior was completely bare, mostly. Okay? In rich carvings and paintings. ये हो गया the architecture. We have seen temple architecture, stupa architecture as well as cave architecture. बचता क्या है? Sculpture. Write down. The post-Mauryan age also witnessed the emergence of several schools of sculpture, such as the Gandhar, Mathura, and Amravati schools. The region where Gandhar school of sculpture flourished: Afghanistan, northwest Pakistan, etc. Right? Emerged during the reign of which rulers? The Indo-Greeks. Is it a purely Indian form of art, or does it also have foreign influence? Foreign influence. In fact, it is a type of Hellenistic art having Indian, Greek, as well as Roman influence. Out of which materials was it constructed? Mud, schist, and stucco. What was the technique of sculpture? Were these sculptures in the round or relief sculptures? In the round. Were these parts of some other monuments such as caves or temples, or were they standalone sculptures? Both. ठीक है? What is the most important theme present? Gandhar art is primarily a religious art form revolving around the theme of which religion? Buddhism. ठीक है? Another important characteristic is the large scale representation of bodhisattvas as protective deities around the image of the Buddha. ठीक है? Now, How is the Buddha shown depicted usually? He is shown in the standing, seated, as well as lying positions. Okay. What kind of a body does he have? A heavily muscled body or desi boy type body? No. Over here, the Greek conventions of sculpture, of statue building are used, and he is given heavy musculature. Does he have soft facial features or sharp features? Sharp features. Is he shown with or without facial hair? Both. How about the hair on his head? Is he shown with a shaved head or with short hair or with long flowing or curly hair? Long flowing and curly hair. Hmm? बन यहाँ पे नहीं दिखता है. ठीक है. Now, obviously, Gandhar art emerged as an expression of devotionalism towards the Buddha due to the emergence of Mahayana Buddhism. And since Buddha was to be worshipped in the form of a god, his statues should also have some supernatural elements to show his divinity. So, what were these supernatural elements? First of all, a highly decorated halo behind the head, and along with that, several Mahapurush Lakshanas, such as long earlobes, long arms, and protuberance of the forehead. So, the forehead is swollen, and this indicates the supreme knowledge of the Buddha. Right? What is the kind of facial expression that the Buddha is depicted as having? Is he highly expressive or generally emotionless? Emotionless. So, pathos of these sculptures is emotionless or devoid of expression. What kind of clothes would the Buddha be shown wearing? Indian clothes or Greek clothes? Greek clothes or Roman clothes? Greek or Roman attire. Further, Buddha would also be shown in several stages of undress, some sculptures being entirely in the nude also. So, an element of eroticism was also visible in his sculpture in the Gandhar art. Now about the Mathura art. First of all, the region Western UP. ठीक है? Primarily Mathura and Kankali Tila being the most important sites patronized by the Kushans first, then by later rulers. Did it also have any foreign elements? No, it was entirely an indigenous form of art, constructed out of materials such as sandstone, mud, and terracotta. What kinds of sculptures? In the round or relief sculptures? In the round sculptures. And were these standalone sculptures or sculptural or structural sculptures? No, these were only stand-alone sculptures, meaning that they were not carved into monuments as part of their ornamentation. Is it purely religious in nature or also has certain secular themes? Common life or daily life of the common people is also captured over here. So both religious as well as secular themes are present. And which religions are covered over here? All major religions, namely Buddhism, Jainism, Vaishnavism, Shaivism, etc., with images of different incarnations of Vishnu, Shiva, Parvati, Ganesh, Skand or Kartikeya, the Jain Tirthankaras, the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas, all being carved in large quantities. Apart from this, we also see the emergence of royal portraiture. किस चीज को? Both real and sculpture. बुद्धिज्म भी प्रेजेंट था, जैनिज्म भी प्रेजेंट था, वैष्णविज्म भी, शैविज्म भी इसमें इन्फ्लुएंस दिखता था, राइट? सो दिस वाज नॉट सम आर्ट फॉर्म दैट वाज कमीशन्ड बाय द किंग्स डायरेक्टली, राइट? इट जस्ट इमर्ज्ड ड्यूरिंग द पीरियड ऑफ द कुशान रूलर्स. क्यों इमर्ज हुआ होगा? बिकॉज दिस वाज अ पीरियड ऑफ ग्रेट सोशल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन एंड religious transformation. During this period in North India, Vaishnavism was also emerging, Shaivism was also emerging, Buddhism was transforming into Mahayana Buddhism, and the idea of image worship was also emerging within Jainism. So it is in response to these changes that you see that all these religious themes are going to be represented. Apart from that, in secular art, royal portraiture also became part of the Mathura school of sculpture. Okay? Portraits or statues of kings started to be made. Apart from this, some folk themes could also be found. Okay? Is it also going to have features such as heavy musculature, sharp facial features, with facial hair, having long and curly hair, etc. ये सब होगा नहीं, तो ग्रीक कन्वेंशन हैं ये सारे, राइट. इंस्टेड it is going to be heavily Indianized, the appearance of the Buddha, right? So moderate build is going to be there. Soft facial features are going to be there. Always clean shaven. Having long curly hair or shaved head? Shaved head. सर के पीछे क्या होगा? चोटी होगी. With a braid, at the back. Is it going to be left loose or tied? Tied, right? So, tied braid at the back. Supernatural elements में we will not find the halo, but we will find the other Mahapurush Lakshanas, such as long earlobes, long arms, protuberance of the forehead, etc. वो सारी चीजें दिख जाएंगी. These are the Mahapurush Lakshanas. Like the Indo-Greek art, is the Buddha going to be shown having no emotion, or highly expressive and emotive face is going to be there? Highly expressive and emotive. In fact, while in the Gandhar school of sculpture, the main focus of the artist was to ensure that the human anatomy is perfectly captured and depicted. यहाँ पे there is lesser attention to human anatomy and its accurate depiction. Rather, more focus is on capturing the emotion. Okay? And what kind of clothes? Foreign clothes or Indian clothes? Indian clothes such as tunic and dhoti, right? So these kinds of kurta and dhoti. So Indian attire or Indian garb is going to be shown wearing. Then we come to the Amravati school of sculpture. Where did this emerge and flourish? In the region of Andhra Pradesh. At sites such as Amravati, Goli, Ghantasila, Nagarjuna Konda, etc. Early patrons, the Satavahanas. ठीक है. Did it have any foreign influence or was it entirely indigenous in nature? It was also indigenous. What were the building materials? Sandstone, mud, schist, and marble. Were these in the round or in relief sculptures? These were relief sculptures. Were they standalone sculptures or part of the ornamentation of different monuments such as stupas? No, they were always part of other monuments. Okay, so in the form of panels on the exterior walls or the under of the stupa, these relief sculptures would be carved. Okay, these were structurally integrated with other monuments. What would be the theme? Both religious and secular themes, or only religious theme? They were parts of monuments. What kinds of monuments do you think? Buddhist monuments, religious monuments. Theme क्या होगा? Purely religious and purely Buddhist also, right? And generally on monuments, what kinds of sculpture is done? Generally, narrative sculpture. Okay? So imagine that you are performing pradakshina around the Amravati stupa and you are seeing different panels of marble over which various carvings have been done. As you move, you are going to be faced with several scenes. From one panel to the other, the story is changing, right? So one panel is going to be there, it is going to show a normal day in the market with people roaming about, vendors shouting, trying to sell their goods, people haggling and bargaining, a mother dragging her child behind her by the arm, right? These kinds of things. In the next scene, what is going to happen? A wild elephant who is in an agitated state is suddenly going to burst into the market. What is going to be the result? Panic everywhere. The shopkeepers are running away. The customers are hiding beneath the carts. The mother has fallen over. The child is crying. Things like this. In the next scene, hero is going to enter. Who is the hero? Buddha. What is he going to do? He is going to simply smile at the elephant and raise his hand in the Abhay Mudra. Right? The elephant who is earlier agitated will suddenly become calm. In the next scene, what is going to happen? People are going to gather around the Buddha, praising him, adoring him, and he is going to bless them. Even the elephant is going to lower its head and raise its trunk as if in adoration of the Buddha. So, this is the kind of story. So, heroic deeds of the Buddha are going to be shown. So, these are narrative sculptures. Okay? What is the focus of the artist going to be on? Is it going to be on anatomical accuracy or capturing the expression, raw emotion? Both. Okay? So, equal attention to anatomical accuracy and emotion is given. These sculptures are highly emotive, highly expressive, as if they are paintings in the form of sculpture. Right? What else will we see? We'll also see scenes of daily life of the farmers, sorry, of the common people. For example, the scene that we saw just now, that is market scene, etc. These things are going to be shown. Apart from that, local legends are going to be enmeshed into the Jataka stories around which this narrative sculpture is going to be based. Okay. Once again, what would be the features of the Buddha like? ऐसे होंगे या ऐसे होंगे? These kinds of features are going to be there. So Indian in appearance, and clothing also. Okay, ये हो गए जी इसके फीचर्स. क्लियर है? ठीक है. So with that we have completed our last phase of or last portion of post-Mauryan age. Clear? So religion, art, literature, society, economy, polity, etc. All these things we have seen. Now next we have to cover which period? The Gupta age. And this we are going to cover in our next lecture. So I'll be ending this lecture for now, and आगे की कहानी कल cover. Any doubts? नहीं? नोट्स मिल गए आपको गुप्तास के या अभी नहीं मिले? नहीं मिला है? कोई बात नहीं, कल मिल जाए. चलिए देन. थैंक यू फॉर योर टाइम. सी यू टुमारो.